Hello, everyone, and thanks for attending today's webcast titled Residential Heat Pump Water Heater Marketing Transformation, Overcoming Cost Hurdles in the Southeast. Hopefully, many of you who are joining us here had a chance to listen in on the opening presentation and plenary. Some great information there really set the tone for what you're going to hear in our session today. I'm Paul Campbell. I'm with ICF, and I currently support Epa Energy Star, specifically in the heat pump water heater product category. And I'll be the moderator for this session today. We'll start this webcast with a few housekeeping announcements and then quickly move on to our presentation. First and foremost, thank you to all of our sponsors and ACEEE Ally members for their support of the Hot Water Forum and ACEEE. Please use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions of the presenters. As the moderator, I'll gather all questions and share for the presenters to answer once all presentations are complete. If we don't get to your question, please join us for 20 minutes of chat or discussion on the Zoom platform immediately following the session. The Zoom link is posted on the audience screen at the very bottom. Please refrain from using the chat for any dialogue other than asking questions. Be sure to check out all the tabs on the left-hand side of the app. From there, you can network with attendees and program participants, visit sponsor pages, and engage in our game to possibly win a free registration to the 2023 Hot Water Forum in Mission Hills, California. The resources section includes the program and a list of attendees for downloading. Lastly, we ask everyone to please help in our planning of future hot water forums by completing the conference evaluation. Anyone who completes the evaluation and includes a testimonial will receive a $25 discount off their 2023 hot water forum registration. And I personally can attest to this because last year I filled out the survey and provided a testimonial, and I got a $25 discount on this year's registration. So it does work. It's real. All the presentations will be available for on-demand viewing to registered attendees on the Socio platform within a few days and will remain available for viewing until May. Presenter slides can be found on their page in the program participants section. And now I'd like to introduce you to our session overview and its distinguished panel of speakers. So our session today is going to demonstrate how a collaboration of industry leaders in the Southeast specifically can effectively overcome unique hurdles to heat pump water heater adoption and identify program design and deployment solutions rooted in the South. Simplicity, low risk to customers, and standardized processes are all critical success factors, as you'll hear. Communicating progress across the supply chain is really the foundation to it all. We've got a great panel today, and I'm really excited to have them all share their stories with you. Our speakers include Maggie Kelly Riggins from the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance. She's Senior Program Manager there. Owen Howlett, who's the Advanced Water Heating Initiative Residential Working Group Lead. He also, in his spare time, is the Sacramento Municipal Utility District Research Program Manager. Nate Jutras is with EPA Energy Star. He's the Water Heater Product Manager, and he's one of the guys that I work most closely with at Energy Star. And then Francois Lebrasseur. He is with A.O. Smith in manufacturing, and he's a business development manager there, specifically in the utility sector. So we're going to start today with our first speaker, who's Maggie. And Maggie's going to discuss considerations for advancing heat pump water heaters with a unique Southeast perspective. So Maggie, take it away.
Perfect. I am going to assume that everybody can hear me. I cannot see the piece anymore. But good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are and where you're joining us from. My name is Maggie Kelly Riggins, and I'm a Senior Program Manager at the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance, as Paul mentioned. I am going to share with y'all some insights from the South, just giving some considerations and hopefully laying some landscapes for our additional speakers today to kind of think about how we approach this type of work in the Southeast. First, I want to just share with y'all a little bit about SEIA and what we consider the Southeast from a Rio perspective. We serve 11 states, so Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. And really the purpose of our organization is to look for a prosperous Southeast by way of energy efficiency. And really and truly what I think is important to recognize for any type of market formation, any type of program or work, or just whether it's charity or otherwise, is to recognize that when you're doing work in the South and really looking for that catalyst for economic growth, it's important to make sure that you're rooted in the region. And so I'm going to share just a little bit today. And so first, I want to first share that the lens at which we take our work at SIA. So one of our 4 values at SIA is to pursue equitable solutions. And so when we are doing our building related work, really any of our work, but particularly in how we design programs and how we approach our solution-based work, we really do sit in and recognize, acknowledge, and account for the history of prejudice and inequality in our Southeastern communities and the roles that it plays in the issues that I'm going to be sharing with you all today some of those inequities so that we can really sit in what we mean by costs and the battle that we will have to overcome for affordable heat pump water heaters in our region. But just to kind of set in on our perspective in this work. So to kind of just get us started, the Southeast has some of the lowest electric rates in the country, around 10, 11 cents. I think I pay about 10 cents a kilowatt hour for my home in Atlanta. But we also have the highest residential bills. That is not only just from our Energy Information Agency at the U.S., but also, this is a phenomenon that comes across the Southeast because Southerners are widely electric. And while we have a lot of electric energy being used for heating, in fact, about 68% of our households use electric space heating, our electric bills are very, very high. When we talk about our electric space heating, we know that's not necessarily water heating, but only about 25% of the households in the Southeast use gas for space heating. And so, the likelihood of someone using, electric for space heating, but gas for water heating, relatively low. So it's pretty electric. So we're already facing a lot of cost barriers where people's energy bills are astronomically high as a proportion of their income in particular. We also, have a lot of high costs outside of that. And so, our low to moderate income households in our region face surmounting amounts of energy insecurity. So we have about 15.4 million households that, cannot adequately meet their heating and cooling, lighting needs in our region. 42% of our households are at unhealthy temperature. That includes about 4 million that do not have access to air conditioning. 39% are receiving disconnection notices, and just under half are reducing that food and medicine, so that heat or eat dilemma in our region. And so, when we talk about what the cost of new equipment, talk about the cost of energy, it really is a much larger piece than just the heat pump, water heater, or the EV charging or whatever infrastructure we're talking about. It really does go much wider than that. And so what I'm going to talk to you guys about today really sits in what is the pathway to affordability and market transformation in our region. And really and truly, it comes down to these 5 elements, what I call the elements of affordability in the South. The first is exactly what you would think of when you think about affordability, is capital. So really looking at financial barriers and how to overcome those in holistic and sustainable ways. So working on differences between owner and renter, support financially, looking at supporting every income level within the region, including those with fixed or no income, taking our energy bills, like you just saw how high the energy bills on average are here in our region. So taking energy bills into account and how we add additional electrons to someone's day-to-day life, but what does that mean for their monthly bills? And then also making sure that our financing is appropriate and helpful in the long run. We've heard a lot of interesting financial models from everything from pay-as-you-save programs with utilities and regional electric co-ops, or there have been ideas floated of a rent-to-own type program, but we really have to be cautious of what is already happening in our region. On average, the number one reason that a Southerner will take out a payday loan or a title loan is to pay their energy bills. And so we have to be very aware and in tune with what the financial barriers are and how to give people access to equipment, to services, to programs, to a future, to an energy secure future without causing, exponential interest rates or programs that are really going to bring on more debt and more societal grief and hard run than not. The next is workforce. So in our region, I think it's really important that we not only have a skilled workforce technically, but also a confident workforce, a workforce that not only serve as champions for advanced building technologies like heat pump water heaters, but also that trust the technology. The trust of the workforce is incredibly important. When we're talking about folks who install, who service, who retrofit, and who, quite frankly, warranty the labor around these products, it's really important that our workforce sees the value, but also has a high trust in what they're installing. I'll give y'all an anecdote that we recently talked to an all-electric builder out of Virginia who was working with a contractor who wouldn't warranty the labor on a heat pump water heater because he didn't trust the technology yet, right? And so we're up against not only that skill, the technical piece, but the confidence in the technology itself, which I'll talk about again in a second. Really central and important to the Southeast pathway of affordability and market transformation is piloting. So, and we like to say that policy will follow practice in our region. You don't see a lot of favorable policy and programs on the energy efficiency side when compared to the rest of the country or really globally. But what's important to recognize in our region is that policy is really about demonstrated support. And I think that Francois in a little bit will tell y'all a little bit about some of the programs that A.O. Smith is running in our region. But when we have programs that serve people, we see the demonstrated support and policies there soon follow. I want to give a shout out to a pilot program from the North Carolina Justice Center where they're installing heat pump water heaters. It's small, it's pretty mighty though, and it's focused on low income populations, hopefully to be a demonstration to say, hey, to the utilities or to other regional groups or manufacturers that this is possible. And not only is it possible to do for low cost and involving our workforce, but to those who need it the most. I think almost most importantly to the Southeast, a why is important. So we talked about the skills and the confidence and the technical side of technology, but the technical part is not as much of a barrier by any means as the why. So what's the connection? How are we connecting individuals, businesses, and institutions to the range of benefits that these offer? How do we take tons of carbon and kilowatt hours and turn them into terms and realities that people live with? How do we connect our plumbers to climate, to resilience, to equity? And really and truly, when we're able to do that, when we're able to create that connection, we see just a plethora of growth around energy efficiency at large, but also around market technology uptake. And then lastly, in those 5 elements is support. So while there are a lot of resources, a lot of trusted tools and support that exists, we really have to think about how they can be easily accessed from our communities in our region and understood from trusted sources. In another conversation, anecdotally recently, I had someone tell me, yeah, I know I can go get this information nested in from, a national lab or from these big groups, but why can't I just get it from City Hall? Or why doesn't my local plumbers association just have this stuff on hand? Reducing touch points and creating support closer to people, to not only to the workforce, but the consumer at large, because we know that really the sales folks that are installing, retrofitting, going into service equipment are going to be our folks that are going to be selling this at the best and really changing out what we see in homes and in buildings across the region. And I think most importantly, what's really important when we talk about affordability in the South and seeing real change in the South is that the solutions need to be rooted from here. We say for South, by the South. And while we have all of these 5 elements to see us moving forward, and we'll see more technology in our region, in order to have real and true shift and transformation, we have to focus on our people. We have to put our people, our Southerners, at the center of the change in the South, and not just the tools and the processes. While all of those things are important, it's really much more so that folks feel like they are at really the center of change. And I'll leave you all with a really exciting opportunity that we are doing at SIA right now, along with AZS Consulting out of Gainesville, Florida, and Veridian out of Richmond, Virginia, where we were selected in a benefit award through the Department of Energy to increase market penetration of advanced buildings, of which one of the ones that we are working with is heat pump water heaters, where we're doing exactly where we're looking at connecting folks with resources closer to them in their day-to-day lives and business, where we're looking to do more of the workforce development that connects people to technical resources, but really sits in on why, and working to figure out how to think about programs and getting people and organizations connected to quality incentives that do exist, and policies and programs that will propel the Southeast forward. My hope is that in sharing this with you all today, that you understand a little bit more about what we're up against in the South, but also a pathway, a yellow brick road, if you will, to what is possible in our region. We are not to be discounted. While we don't have the high market penetration that the heat pump water heaters are perfectly made for in our hot and humid climate, we can be there, and we can do that by the pathway made through the South. So I appreciate it. I'm grateful that you all were able to join this session that's focused in on the Southeast. But now I am going to turn it back over to Paul.
Great. Maggie, thanks so much for kicking us off. That's a real reality check, right? That you took us through the Southeast, some really unique, challenging, but huge opportunities for all of us as we look at the region. Took away so much of what you mentioned. And that's the irony in when you look at the Southeast, the climate, the conditions are ideal for heat pump technology and these applications we're talking about. Yet all these challenges remain, and so I think collaboratively, that's where we're all out to find new pathways to overcome that and gain that trust and that buy-in of the resources, as you mentioned, rooted there in the South. So thanks again so much. Our next presenter is Owen Howlett, and Owen's going to be speaking to an overview of the Advanced Water Heater Initiative's collaborative approach to reducing heat pump water heater product and installation costs. So that Owen's going to talk specifically about a real challenge, and it's not just unique to the Southeast, that's really across the industry. And that's that first cost hurdle relative to other options that are out in the market today in the water heating space. So Owen, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So this morning, I'm going to be covering some of the cost challenges and some of the solutions that AWHI is working on so that we can collectively solve those cost challenges. Maggie's presentation is such a strong message that what we are doing with water heaters, we have a responsibility to not just reduce greenhouse gases and meet policy goals, but there are people out there who are making decisions not to buy food or not to buy medicine because their energy bills are so high. And the technology that we have in our hands that we can help to bring about and make successful can remove that difficult choice from people, can make people's lives really measurably better. It can, and maybe even help to right historical wrongs. I mean, this is a great opportunity we have. It's a great responsibility, and it's pretty thrilling to be involved in all this. So, Paul, I have to advance my slide. Right, there we are. So, in terms of costs, obviously, costs are ubiquitous. Costs are not just an issue for the Southeast, and it sounds like cost solutions are going to have to be regional to be effective. But by the same token, a lot of the cost hurdles that we're seeing are costs that are common, right? They're shared by anybody who is involved in a water heater installation anywhere in the country. And for context, the labor cost normally seems to be around 2/3 of the cost that customers are seeing. Only around 1/3 of that cost is the actual water heater itself. And we would hope and expect from previous technology adoption curves that the cost of water heaters will eventually come down, and that will be great when it happens. But the immediate opportunity is mostly in our labor and how we frame the labor, how we incentivize the labor, how we train the labor, how we sell the labor. So all those that's where our immediate opportunity in the next few years really lies. So what I've listed out here is my laundry list of all the sources of cost that we're seeing, and I won't walk you through each one of those, but it starts with just a delay in getting a quote, because time is money. And if we miss a window of getting a customer interested in a heat pump water heater, they're going to go with some other solution, some easier solution. So that reducing that delay in getting a quote to a customer is huge, because the competition we have is if somebody wants to replace a gas water heater with another gas water heater, a contractor will give them a quote over the phone and come around the same day and do it. It's no risk to the customer. It's super easy. It's just push a button and it gets done. Whereas what we're trying to sell them on is something altogether more complex. It takes longer. They're going to have to get multiple quotes. They're going to have to wait. So that right there is a giant hurdle. And then when we get to actually being on site and getting a quote and doing the work, we're seeing a lot of risk being put into pricing. And what that translates to is that if a customer is risk tolerant and that customer is willing to pay time and materials for the work, they'll generally get a good rate, because if the contractor just charges you for the work they do, you tend to come out ahead. It's the customers who are less risk tolerant and want a fixed price with guarantees. They're the customers who are paying more, because the contractors themselves are including that risk in the quote they give, and that is for sure still keeping costs higher than they necessarily need to be. And then on site we have a lot of unknowns. So the third bolded bullet here. When contractors get to site, there's going to be additional wiring that needs to be done if they're replacing a gas water heater. There may or may not be a panel upgrade. There may or may not therefore be a breaker upgrade. And there may therefore be some utility work that needs to be done, like with a service drop or a secondary or field transformer that needs to be upgraded, that may cause a further delay. So a lot of this is unknown. Some of it's known, but a lot of it is unknown. We're dealing with known unknowns and a handful of unknown unknowns. And then the last bullet, which I think in a way is most important, which is why it's in the dessert slot there, is that utilities and others who are trying to reduce cost and control cost, we don't actually have very much visibility into those costs. If you ask somebody from utility, typically, how much are your customers paying to install, a thermostatic mixing valve? They don't know. They don't know how much labor is involved in that. They don't maybe even know the cost of a mixing valve, because those things aren't broken out in the costs that utilities see. And we don't know, like, how much does it cost typically if the customer has to put in a condensate pump because there's no easy drain line route to the outside of the house. We don't know how much a condensate pump costs. So if we can't break down some of these costs, we can't get insight into how to reduce them. And also we then can't get a good cost breakdown to propose a code change, which is ultimately the big fish that we all want to catch, right? We want to be able to say to a regulator, we think that costs are heading in this direction. These elements of costs are going to disappear over time. These elements are going to persist but be reduced. We can't make those kind of projections on cost if we don't know what is making up the cost that we see. So visibility into cost is extremely important. So this is what AWHI is currently doing to help utilities and help everyone else involved in the market space to reduce costs. We have essentially 5 programs running. The first, and those are the columns here on the graph. The rows on the chart, those 4 rows on the chart are the 4 bolded bullets from the previous slide. So those rows are the sources of cost, and then the columns are what we're doing to reduce that cost. The first column is the 120 volt water heater replacements, because obviously if you don't have to futz around with the circuits and the panel as much, potentially you're bringing your costs down. And we had initially thought that those would only be a niche solution for maybe smaller, older homes or older multifamily retrofits. But it looks like if those devices really perform, they could be a very relevant solution everywhere, where there are gas replacements going on. The second column here is the emergency or same-day replacements. This is overcoming that first barrier mostly of the delay in getting a quote. And this is something that we are working with. NEA is intending to run a pilot of this approach in Montana, and we're also intending to develop best practice guidance that other utilities can use to advance on how to work with installers to get same-day replacements done. The third column is the data collection and sharing. That was that dessert bullet point. This is AWHI is developing standardized data collection and standardized data recording so that multiple utilities can share data that they're collecting from their programs, and we can see it all in one place, and we can compare and contrast, and we can say, let's say a utility in the Southeast is interested in starting a program. That utility in the Southeast could look at in a shared database. They could look at what other similar utilities are doing. Utilities that may be the similar size to them, or utilities have a similar climate to them, or a similar customer base they do, and they can see what those other utilities are doing, and they can see whether it's working. At the moment, we have no insight into that. We have a bunch of programs all around the country doing different things, and we can't really capture what they're doing unless we have some kind of conference. So this shared data and database would allow us to share all that stuff in the same place. The fourth column is installer education. This is a project where we are working. Paul Campbell, is working with Energy Star and others to develop education for installers so they can do their job with more confidence. Maggie told us how important confidence and trust is, trust in the technology, also trust of the customer in the installer, and that confidence. So that this program, this task within AWHI is intended to address that. And then the last one is simply program best practices, sharing what we know regularly, AWHI regularly reporting out to utilities to say, this is what we've learned, this is where we think everyone should be going, and here's some information that will help you to set up a program or to improve programs you already have. So if you'd like more information on any of these efforts that AWHI is running, this is mostly a volunteer effort. You can contact me, you can contact Paul, or you can contact the AWHI team at New Buildings Institute. They will loop you in and help you to be involved if you'd like to be. Back to Paul.
So thank you, Owen, for that. It shows what is possible when very passionate stakeholders across the industry come together and really put their minds to addressing real issues in the space. You know, what I heard you say, and it's true, you know, from a customer's perspective, nobody likes surprises, right? So you're quoted a job for a particular activity, and then you find out that there's so many extra charges because it takes infrastructure upgrades, whether inside or outside the home, and a number of other things. And suddenly the costs start to add up significantly, and you weren't prepared for that. You didn't plan for that. And so having that information up front, being very clear and succinct and specific is really going to help. So in other words, you know, driving the variability across the supply chain down as much as possible, and then providing visibility to that data, that information to all the players across the supply chain, so we're all better informed on what it's going to take to reach the common end that we're all trying to get to. But we're all sometimes taking a lot of different pathways, and we really need to consolidate to bring us together to achieve that. So thanks again for your piece, and look forward to hearing from you more in just a little bit. Next up, we're going to transition over to Epa Energy Star, Nate. Nate's going to be talking more about some of the strategies and tactics that Energy Star is deploying with regard to region assessment, outreach tactics, and then ultimately a marketing plan and deployment strategy for a region like the Southeast. Go ahead, Nate.
So I want to take a moment to just talk about why we're looking at the Northeast, or sorry, the Southeast in particular. And Maggie touched on some of the reasons. We're talking about high percentage of people who are paying a very disproportionate amount of their income for their utility bills, their heating and cooling bills. And efficient. I mean, this is a region that efficiency is very much needed. And so there's some unique opportunities. First, there's the warm, humid climate. And we're also, there's a prevalence of water heaters already installed in warm, humid garages, which provides an excellent environment in which to install a heat pump water heater. There's typically more than adequate volume of air from which to pull heat, good overall clearance, great temperature. Ideal temperature for most manufacturers' site is between 40 and 90 degrees. You're certainly going to fall in that range, and a bit on the higher end. And then there's some marginal benefits of localized cooling and dehumidification. Although I think I want to caution folks from overemphasizing how much cooling there is. We do run into, we have to demystify that fairly regularly. In other parts of the country, people don't want to install it into their basement because they think it's going to make their basement freezing, and that's not the case. It is very much a localized cooling impact, and the dehumidification is typically not a lot of pull, but it can certainly help in that environment. The Southeast, as Maggie pointed out, also has a very high share of electric homes. She pointed out that about 68% are using electric for heat. I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of those are using electric to heat their water as well. So what that means is no additional costs to run new wires. If they already have an electric resistance water heater in there, 240 volt, it's a much easier swap out than natural gas. On the other hand, first cost is an omnipresent challenge when we're talking about investing in efficiency in the Southeast. Even with the relatively quick payoff of a heat pump water heater, and I'll get to the savings in just a moment. At this point, I think that will change over time, but without the utility incentives, there really is not a market for heat pump water heaters. We have federal tax credits, but that's even not an immediate first cost. You're going to get that when you do your taxes at the beginning of the next fiscal year. So there are utility programs, but it's definitely a much lower penetration of utility programs, much lower incentive level. Typically don't see a lot of midstream or instant discount at retail, and those tend to be the effective programs. So those that are aware and have, and I'm sorry. Also, there's a limited foundational knowledge on the side of consumers as well as installers of the heat pump water heater, and so without that, and so customers are just not asking for it, and we can generally see those installers that are aware of it and are asked to install it. Owen talked about some of the install prices. they see this as a premium product, and they are definitely on the higher end. So if they can get their hands on a heat pump water heater in those regions, it's almost never a emergency replacement. We're talking about proactive, which is a minority of installs anyways. So it's definitely a number of barriers out there. In terms of tools and deployment, this is something that I want to stress is not just regional specific, but a national message that we want to get out to utility programs, implementers, is that version 4.0 of the Energy Star water heating specification went live, launched at the beginning of 2022. And what it does is it really just reflects the technology that's out there that the manufacturers have been working so hard to develop. And I want to put a shout out also to our friends at NIA, who have been helped driving this over the years, pushing the envelope on the technology. And so the Energy Star specification that we launched this year, it really demonstrates the value proposition of a heat pump water heater. Household of 4, annual savings of $427. That's real savings. And in terms of marketing and sales strategies, we're looking at a tailored approach to the Southeast, working with stakeholders on the ground, as well as some potentially very impactful funding sources, including DOE, and also just piggybacking on some of the existing utility programs, but looking beyond those. So one of those is the weather assistance programs, and the DOE's received funding, or I'm sorry, the weather assistance programs received $3.5 billion in outlays for weatherization over the coming years under the infrastructure bill that was passed last year. So there's certainly some funding out there that we would like to put towards essentially reducing the energy costs for low-income households, which is the primary purpose of the WAP program. But we'll also look at bulk rate purchasing and working with installers to increase awareness, establishing a flat rate install price once they are more familiar with the technology and assured of have a better idea of what the risk levels are, and we've seen that applied successfully in other parts of the country. So just want to share my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out, and I want to turn it over to Francois. Thank you.
So Nate, thanks so much for your presentation and for the information that you shared. I think the things I took away from it is that Energy Star as a whole represents this huge network of partnerships, right, all across the country, and all the different touch points in the supply chain, from manufacturers to distributors to installers to retailers, home builders, and the end user, whether it be in the residential or the commercial space. And so it's leveraging that network and all those relationships, and specifically what's been established in the Southeast to help us drive this movement around heat pump water heaters. One thing I'll make a selfish plug for the Energy Star Manufacturers Action Council that was created a couple years ago. We've got the top 8 heat pump water heater manufacturers who come together monthly, share ideas and perspectives, and hopefully provide direction, which they've been doing a tremendous job of for Energy Star, in the kinds of strategies and tactics from their perspective on what's going to work in the industry. This is a team that's been at this for the better part of a decade plus, and so they've seen a little bit of everything, and so they recognize the do's and don'ts and what they think is really through a combination of variables is going to work. And so just know that resource is out there collectively. So if there's interested parties participating today that wants to learn more about that dynamic or have access or share in an upcoming meeting, please reach out and let us know. So with that, it's kind of a nice segue into our last presenter, and that's Francois Brasseur from A.O. Smith. And he's going to talk specifics for product application and training, bulk purchasing, leveraging bulk purchasing channels, and outreach tactics from a manufacturer's point of view with a little bit of a Southeast flair to it. So Francois, it's all yours.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. So next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So I will share a manufacturer's perspective, which is very similar to what you've heard before. What we notice from an industry perspective is that if you look at the Southwest and the Southeast, they represent 60% of the electric water heaters sold in the United States. But they only account for 34% of the heat pump water heater installation. So it's a huge disconnect. And this is despite the fact, like what's been said before, that there are very favorable conditions for heat pump water heaters in the South. There's very strong population growth, vibrant new construction. The energy requirements for a builder to pull the permit are becoming more and more stringent. And yes, heat pump water heater is even more efficient in hot climate. And there's a large number of garage installations where really ideal for the heat pump water heater. So why that disconnect? It's primarily driven by cost, yes. And we really would welcome more code changes and programs to help reduce that cost barrier and allow for a great penetration of heat pump water heater in the South. That will have a significant impact on volume sold in the industry with all the benefit that you can think of. The next slide. So I will highlight a couple of things. A new construction from a manufacturer perspective is where it all starts. Do not let an inefficient water heater flow into the market if you can stop it at the beginning, because it will be more expensive to actually try to replace that inefficient water heater by a heat pump water heater down the road. So where we can, it takes a village, but where we can all help ourselves is by making sure that we tell the builders in the South and the energy raters that if they will swap out a standard electric to a heat pump water heater, it will save anywhere between 3 and 6 horse points, and more like 5 or 6 horse points in the South. We have built a nice video, which I reference on this slide. You'll have it, that really explained in 3 or 4 minutes the benefits of installing a heat pump water heater in new construction. So please relay that video in all the social networks that you have, and convey that the heat pump water heater is one of the cheapest upgrade method to actually increase the efficiency of a new home. Next slide. In new construction, we're seeing programs which are very innovative. Most of the new construction programs are performance driven. But I like the program in Maryland because in addition to offering incentives for performance achievements, the Maryland utilities also offer a kicker for specifically heat pump water heater installation. I think that's a great idea to show the builder and energy raters that, hey, do the right thing and you'll be rewarded. So I invite you to look at what Maryland has been doing, and if you can, do it in the other states in the South. Next slide. Another concept or idea in new construction is this idea of a smart neighborhood. A utility could go to a builder and say, well, here's what I'm going to do. Instead of having you installing a standard electric water heater, I will help pay for the difference between the standard electric and the heat pump water heater. But in exchange, you're going to give me the keys to that heat pump water heater. So the benefit, of course, we'll all have a benefit because the heat pump water heater reduces the load by 70%. But in addition, by actually connecting the heat pump water heater to the heat pump water heater, the utility will be able to do peak shaving or peak shifting, which is very valuable. And water heaters in general are a contributor to energy peaks, especially in the winter peak. So think about this concept. Basically, in exchange for helping the builder financially, you'll get the keys to that smart neighborhood. Next slide. For the replacement market, there's been tons of supports of multiple utilities around the nation that have been switching their mailing rebates to instant rebates, which we welcome. This is always more effective. We're asking that the instant rebate be available in the two main channels that sell water heaters, which is the wholesale channel and the retail channel. And then with COVID, the manufacturers, we have put a lot of resources online. So it is our job as manufacturers to really drive the training of the contractors. But you can also relay that information by pointing to all the resources that we have online. At A.O. Smith, we have a certification program where the professionals will get information, and then will be quizzed, and if they pass, they will get the certification. In general, heat pump water heaters are not very complicated to install for a professional. It is, but it is important that we explain the small differences. And finally, now, who really benefits from the heat pump water heater? That's the end consumer. If we can partner more and more between the industry and the governments or the utilities and drive the message to consumers that by switching to a heat pump water heater, they are saving on energy, but they're also reducing the carbon emissions. So it's good for the planet. So the more we can partner to educate the consumers and create that demand to the trade, the better. And finally, I have a final slide. There is an idea, which is bulk purchases. Now, if you can commit to manufacturers on a volume of heat pump water heaters that you will be purchased to retrofit a community, especially the Savannah community, we'll work with our distributors to provide the lowest possible price on the heat pump water heater, and and then what you can do is negotiate a fixed price, installation price with local contractors. Again, volume is important to get them excited about the opportunity. I like to pinpoint a best practice that has been implemented for more than 5 years now in Maine by Efficiency Maine. And that's exactly what they've been doing. They've been committing more than 1,000 heat pump water heaters to the industry every year, and they've been negotiating a flat price for installation with local contractors. And I give on this slide the URL. There was a presentation done about 2 years ago, so feel free to look at that presentation. We'll give you some great details on how to do this. So this is my presentation, concludes my presentations on obviously the South is a huge opportunity for market transformation, and here are some ideas to improve the situation and get going. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Francois. I think what I heard from you is that, the old adage of volume solves a lot of ills, right? So the more we can get product deployed in bulk out into these regions, it's going to solve for a lot of the challenges that we've been faced with, right? Volume discounts, price points come down, familiarity and education of the entire supply chain, the confidence and the willingness. It's part of that trust message that Maggie opened up with today, getting people to feel comfortable and trusted that the products are going to perform in the way that they're advertised. And that, we haven't reached that tipping point yet, right? Give credit to the manufacturers. They've continued to innovate on this product category for, 10, 15 years now without a huge market share in place, right? But it certainly feels like we're on the cusp of some incredible growth and market penetration of this product category. And so we're all working so very hard and very fast to get there. But it's going to take that collaboration. It's going to take that communication. That's really been the central theme, I think, of everything that we've talked about today. We've got just a couple of minutes to address some of the questions that came up in the chat. And it's certainly, if you've thought of some more, please drop them in. Anything we don't get to here, just a quick reminder again, there's going to be a follow-up Zoom session for us to continue the conversation and share more questions and more answers to that. But I wanted to get to a couple right here. So Maggie, I don't know if you've joined us, but I know we're going to bring the panelists back together here. And I know Maggie had to step away, but she'll be with us at the Zoom question. So I'm gonna skip the point about the North Carolina program that was asked, and we'll come back to that. Oh, and a question for you. It said, would you please list the source of the statistic that 2/3 of installed costs for heat pump water heaters is labor related?
Yeah. So a lot of the numbers that we are seeing at the moment are kind of anecdotal. They are from things like small back-of-the-envelope studies that utilities have conducted on their own programs. So there's a paucity of official numbers on these. The numbers that I said in my talk, that about 2/3 of the cost we're seeing is labor. That's specific to the program that I'm involved with at SMUD, and what I've heard from other people who are running programs in California. So that may translate across the country a little bit, but that's what we're seeing. There was another question here which I wanted to quickly address, which is Brian said, it sounds like I was only talking about gas to electric replacement. Yes, I tend to gravitate toward the gnarliest problem. So I often talk about gas replacement. What a lot of the stuff that we're working on, which is for replacement, is applicable swap outs. Not necessarily all of it though. So it's kind of similar problems, but electric doesn't have some of the problems that gas has. So same but less so.
And Owen, sticking with you just for a second here, there was another question that came in asking about, since we certainly talked a lot about residential applications, but there was a question about central heat pump water heaters in multifamily residential buildings and the opportunities there. Yeah,
for sure. So there is a whole other department in AWHI to do with multifamily systems. That's led by Kashmira at Bonneville Power, and also by John Heller at Ecotope. So that side of AWHI is working a lot on the technical engineering challenges of central systems, because with single dwelling unit residential systems, we have the luxury that we don't really have many technical problems. The manufacturers have very kindly solved those for us. But with central systems, we have a lot of questions still about how to make this stuff work in different environments. And they're working on that hard right now. So anybody who's interested, contact someone at AWHI and they'll put you in touch with that program.
Great. Thank you for that. And Francois, one for you. The very unique question came up from our friends in Ontario, Canada. Talks about any ideas in place for homes that rent their water heaters currently. The statistic was about half the homes in Ontario, the homeowners actually rent their water heaters today.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm originally French. I'm not Canadian, so I'm not interacting a lot in Canada. But the one thing I'll tell you, I think that the opportunity we've talked about it in the United States is this concept of pay as you save, which is yes, maybe the upfront cost is higher, but find a way to fund that difference with the savings on the electric bill. So more to I think there's more to dig as an opportunity here. Okay.
All right, thank you, Francois. So time for one more question before we end here, and then we'll kick it over to the Zoom portion of the presentation. But Nate, question for you is, when you look at the industry and where it is today versus where it's going to be in the next couple of years, what are you most encouraged about with respect to heat pump water heater sales growth?
Just the level of excitement that we're seeing from efficiency programs. And it's not universal, but we were just on a call last week with one program, and I'm not sure I can disclose which one because they're still in the planning stages. But they're launching a fuel switching initiative that will include, and one of the it'll not rent to own, but a leasing program that will that's already gotten some interest from a lot of landlords in that region, because they see that as a really, it takes away a lot of the risk and uncertainty of this new what they think is a new technology. It really isn't. But we're seeing that from around the country is that folks want to invest in this. It's a tremendous savings, and there's just high customer satisfaction with heat pump water heaters. So I think the time is now to really switch into high gear and turn into a real high volume segment.
Great. Well, thank you for that. So at this time, we're just about up. I want to thank all of our great speakers and their presentations, and also to all of you as attendees for participating in today's webcast. Again, if you want to continue the conversation, explore more about the presentations you've heard today, the session as a whole, please follow us over to the Zoom chat. The link is at the bottom of this page that you're looking at, as well as over in the chat itself. We listed that initially. So hopefully you can join us there. But I'm really encouraged by the messages that were shared today. And you can tell there's so much scalability, even though we focused on the Southeast region. When we look at the national footprint, we obviously have pockets of excellence, right? We have certain organizations, certain partners that have really taken it to heart and have pushed hard. And so there's some great benchmarks, but we recognize that not one solution fits everyone. And we've got to be very conscious of that and know our audience and build messages and appeal that's going to return the greatest participation from that standpoint. I think that's part of this message today. So again, thanks very much, and we hope to see you over on the Zoom.